everyone. Welcome to another week of ProMAX Tech Talks. I got Mike and Taylor on the line, and this week we're going to be talking about 10 gig networking, why you need it, and who should be using it. So guys, let's just jump right into this. Taylor, what is 10 gigabit networking? Why do you need it?
So 10 gig networking is just what it sounds like. It's networks that run at 10 gigabits of performance. Your average network on your home computer, probably home office, is going to be 1 gig. Even most office buildings nowadays, they still run on 1 gig because, for your general applications like Word, connecting to, your company shared storage system for, files and Excel documents, things like that, 1 gig is plenty. For video production or anything that you're using large amounts of data, big video files, need to transfer things quickly, or playback media that, has very high bandwidth requirements, 10 gig is almost a necessity in our industry. So, yeah.
Okay. Do you want to describe a little bit how it works? Like, what's the difference between the 1 gig to the 10 gig to get that performance?
So the difference is the network adapters in the computer. So if you have a PCI card, you're probably going to need a 10 gig PCI card, fiber or copper. You're going to need Cat6A or Cat7 cabling to get proper 10 gig performance. Or if you're having a fiber network, you're going to need, fiber optics, SFP modules. And to connect multiple devices, you're going to end up needing a switch as well. Yeah, that should be it.
Okay. So Mike, it sounds like this 10 gig is for anyone who's working with any type of media. Who else should have a 10 gig network set up in their office or at their home?
Pretty much anyone that wants just a general faster workflow in general, because 10 gigs is just going to surpass anything at this point, other than like 25 gig and 100 gig. That's just expensive, but yeah, anyone that can utilize just any speed differences from just merely like just a basic file transfer at that point. You want to send all your footage like from your workstation that you just, you got back from a shoot and you want to just throw it on your server. It's so much faster than just going over 1 gig. Rather than waiting days or like hours in a sense, it'll be like 1 hour for like 500 gigs, if that.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, guys. So for anyone who's using shared storage, how can 10 gig impact their performance? Like, what are the benefits of that? Are there any downsides to having 10 gig on your network? Do you want to lead us off there, Mike?
So yeah, pretty much there's no real downside to 10 gig to my knowledge here. Let me rephrase that. The only bad thing about 10 gigs is it's a little expensive. That's really like the most of it. Having 10 gig in general is just going to open so much bandwidth, so you can do all your file transfers, even like multiple streams in that sense. So like, let's say you're doing so many layers on your edits, like you're not going to have like chugging or lagging in a sense, depending on what you're doing, but it just opens a whole like different world versus 1 gig.
Okay.
One thing I'll mention on that point, though, is that 10 gig networking in the last couple of years has come down greatly in price. Like, you can set up a 10 gig network that used to cost 10 grand or more for like the same amount, around like 3 to 4 grand. So it's a lot less, but it still is, compared to a 1 gig network, much more expensive.
Okay, cool. So Taylor, when you were in your last comment, you were talking about some of the different adapters and ports that you might need to set up a 10 gig network. What other hardware requirements are there, like cabling? What kind of stuff do you need to set that up?
So the first requirement is the actual adapters to reach 10 gig performance. So you're going to need PCI cards, something that goes in a Thunderbolt enclosure, Thunderbolt to 10 gig adapters for Macs. And then you're going to need 10 gig switches and make sure that the server or other device that you're connecting to also supports 10 gig. To get those two devices connected, you're going to need the proper cabling. So if you're going with fiber, you're going to need SFP modules. Depending on the distance that you're going over, you'll need short range or long range, and then different types of fiber cabling to connect those devices. And then for copper, you're going to need Cat6A or Cat7 cabling.
Okay. Could you guys recommend any adapters that people should look for? Like, which ones are a little bit better than the others, or like a good, better, best?
Yeah, so for Macs, your kind of like your gold standard is going to be just your simple Sonnet Twin 10G, with the Intel X550 chipset. And that Intel X550 can be purchased as a PCI card for PCs. Intel makes great cards. Another good company is Chelsea. They make fantastic 10 gig adapters and 25 gig, 100 gig, etc. And they're a little bit less pricey than the Intel cards.
Okay, cool. And is setting up a network gonna change whether you're doing it at your home or your office, or is that pretty much the same process?
The process is the same. It's just the scale and distance. So if you're, setting up in a office building, because the distances you're running, a Cat 5 cable can run 10 gig over really short distances. But if you're going like, even 10, 20 feet, you might want to upgrade to Cat 6A. And then if you're going like, 300 feet or something, or 300 meters, you're going to need something like Cat 7 to get that proper 10 gig performance, because the drop off is pretty significant over distance for 10 gig.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Taylor. And Mike, to wrap this up, for ProMAX Platform, how can we integrate with the 10 gig network, and what kind of performance expectations can someone expect to see when they switch from a 1 gig network to a 10 gig network?
So on Platform, it actually does integrate it pretty seamlessly. Under your connection screen, you'll actually have every single connection that's on the server itself. So it'll be like 1 gig, your internet port, 1 gig. Sometimes if you have a custom card in there, like you might even have like a Wi-Fi port, but generally it's 1 gig and then 10 gigs that are listed underneath. And if you have like team connections, a little advanced talk here, there'll be like 20 or 40 gig connections underneath there. So it's pretty seamless on the interface, and then it'll show you what's connected and what's not. And then you'll definitely see a huge performance between each workstation and the server itself. It is limited to depending on what kind of drives you have and how many drives you have. Or you'll notice a big difference between 1 gig and 10 gig. It's how would you say, Taylor, like 10, not even tenfold really.
Yeah, so the main difference is even to like a single SAS hard drive, right? A 1 gig connection is a bottleneck to that single drive. To any RAID set, your 1 gig connection is going to be, easily a 6 to 8 times your bottleneck. So if you add a 10 gig connection, you're basically just removing the bottleneck of that 1 gig, and you're opening yourself up to, easily the full performance of your storage system, depending on how many disks you have. That could be something like 400 megabytes per second as opposed to the 100 you're getting, or somewhere in the range of like 800 to 1,000.
Awesome, cool. That's some really great performance. So guys, before we wrap this up, is there anything else that we left out about 10 gig networking that we should touch on?
Definitely do your research on what components and design first before just going in the ring and just buying components. Because the worst thing you can do is buy stuff and not get anything working in a sense.
Yeah.
So, or to prepare first and do your research.
One thing I'll mention is that 10 gig, it's come a long way since, the early days of 10 gig. We've had like a decade to get 10 gig, up to speed and compatible with everything else. But 1 gig has been around for, like 3 decades, basically. It's like 2 decades in most cases, in most practical applications. So most systems out of the box, you plug them into a 1 gig network, you're going to get the full performance and you're good to go. 10 gig, even with all the advances we made, there's still a lot of tuning and fine, refinement you can do to the network to get the full performance out of a, 10 gig line. Because you can have the exact same adapter as another workstation and you have the right config and they don't, and you can get, 400 on one system and 800 on another. And it's really just a matter of, hey, have you fine-tuned the settings to make it work just right? And we help everyone with that. Our system, does that by default when you install our listener client. And our tech team is always willing to support and help people, get the maximum out of their system possible.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So you heard it here first. If you work in media and entertainment, you need a 10 gig network so you can work on getting that set up now. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Like Taylor said, our tech team is always here to support you during these things. So see you next week on another ProMAX Tech Talk. If you haven't already, hit that red subscribe button below and follow our social media channels so you get more news as soon as it comes out from us. Thanks, guys. Have a great one.